Welcome. Today is the 23rd day of Tammuz, the 29th of July. We're up to the second reading of Matot-Massei, the two parshas that close up the book of Numbers, Sefer B'Midbar. And our reading is full of numbers, but we're going to focus on one place where you don't expect to find the numbers, but they're there, and see a lot of how you can at least Rav Ginsburg's methodology of analyzing Torah to get science out of it. Actually, this is a very unique verse that we're going to look at, but for the context, after the war with Midian, they had taken a lot of spoils from them, and there's new laws that are being introduced into a vessel or utensil that's taken from a non-Jew and a Jew wants to use. The clear reason for doing this would be because the non-Jew probably ate non-kosher food in it. It only stands to reason. So the question is, what's the process of making something kosher? How do you take a vessel and make it kosher? So for that we have a very, very important verse here from which we learn many of the laws of koshering a vessel. Not all of them. A lot of them are learned from things that were done in the tabernacle, in the temple, because there too we have an issue of something that was used for consecrated meat, and you want to then use it for something else. You can't just automatically take it and use it. You have to first kosher it, in a sense, and the other way around. So there's two real sources. Those are the two big sources in the temple itself and after this war. So let's read these verses and what happens with them. We're looking at Numbers 31:21. So Elazar the priest said to the soldiers returning from battle, this, meaning the laws of purification, is the rule that God commanded Moses. But now he seems to skip and just go straight into what the vessel is made out of. So he says, but the gold, the silver, the copper, the iron, the tin, and the lead, whatever is used in fire, you must pass through fire. So from this we learn that if something was used to cook on a fire, to kosher it, to make it, to clean it, basically to remove the part of the food that entered into the vessel. If the vessel is made of some kind of metal, so you can cleanse it by putting it in the fire also. Now, what does that mean? So the laws of kashrus are such. We're just going to do a quick review just to get into the hang of things here. That if I cooked using an open flame, in other words, let's say I have a sharp rod and I put my meat on the rod, and the rod is made out of some kind of metal. So the food was directly on the rod, on this metal rod, and it went straight into the fire because I cooked it on the fire. So to cleanse, meaning to purify the rod, I have to do the same thing without the meat, meaning I put the rod directly into an open flame until it reaches the same plus a little bit more heat that it would have been at when the non-kosher food was cooked on it. On the other hand, if I have a pot, and the pot doesn't, the food inside the pot doesn't go on the open flame, it's the pot that's on the flame, the food inside is at a lower temperature, it's not like the open flame, so when I want to kosher it, I take the pot and I put it into water that has been boiled to the same temperature that the food inside would have been. And that's how I kosher that, and so on. Everything is koshered by the same heat or in the same method in which it swallowed from the food that is forbidden. And this goes particularly for metals. Now, the next verse says, well, not the next verse, the continuation of the same verse, verse 23, but it must be purified with sprinkling water, or the water that is sprinkled. It must be immersed to purify it whatever is not used in fire, you need immerse it in the water. What's this talking about? It's saying, what if there's a vessel I don't cook with? Like, for instance, a regular plate. On the face of it, as long as the plate hasn't been in contact with hot food, so I can just clean it. That's enough. You don't need to do anything more. But we learn something more from here. On the other hand, if the plate is used for hot food, then you have to purify it, meaning kosher it, exactly the same way, at the same heat that the food would have been at. So, but we learn one extra law from this, which is that if I take any vessel from somebody who's not Jewish, I buy it from them, buying it is not enough, I still have to immerse it in water. And that's called hagalat kelim. Tvilat kelim. That's called the immersion of vessels. So a new vessel that I buy, even if nobody's ever used it, and it's going to come in contact with food in any way, I also have to immerse it in a mikveh. And this is the equivalent of water that is sprinkling. But we're actually not here for all these laws. I just wanted to give you a certain taste of what we get from this. What we want to look at is the metals that are mentioned in this very particular verse, Numbers 31:22. The gold, the silver, the copper, the iron, the tin, and the lead. What's special about this? That all 6 metals of antiquity are in this verse. All 6 are mentioned in one verse. These were the metals that were known in antiquity. There was one more that was added a little bit later. I believe it's about 1,000 years after the Torah was written. And it used to be called quicksilver. We call it mercury. So that was another metal that the ancients talked about, quicksilver. But these are the only 7, the 6 here plus quicksilver and mercury, are the only 7 that were known in antiquity. Now, interestingly, all 7 of them are elements to our day and age. They haven't changed. They're still elements. So we have that gold is element number 79, and silver is 47, and copper is 29. Tin, which is mentioned here, is 50, and lead is 82, and kingdom is iron. I already added the sfirot, I shouldn't have done that, but iron is 26, and quicksilver, mercury, is 80. Now, since there are 7, Kabbalistic literature, which already was written usually after the addition of quicksilver, immediately says this corresponds to different sets of 7. So what sets of 7 do we know? So in antiquity, the most important set of 7 was not the sfirot yet. That wasn't yet discussed by everyone. So what they corresponded these 7 to was to the visible planets. And they considered a planet as a wanderer. So they considered the sun and the moon to be planets because they move, as opposed to, and they change, as opposed to regular stars which don't. So they took these 7 and they corresponded them already in the Book of Formation. There's already some kind, in the commentaries at least, there's already a correspondence between these 7 metals and the 7 planets. But it's a short jump, skip, or hop to connecting this to the sfirot. And so we get something like this, that loving kindness is silver. And this is a well-known correspondence that is used everywhere in Kabbalistic and Hasidic literature. Gold is might, gevura. And the reason for this is that silver is considered to be more watery and gold is considered to be more fiery. So silver goes on the right with water and loving kindness, and the metal gold goes on the left and it's considered to be more fiery, goes together with might. Then copper is on the middle axis, and it corresponds to beauty, tiferet. Then we have the tin, corresponds to victory, to netzach, and oferet, lead, corresponds to hod, to acknowledgement. To kingdom we have barzel, which is iron, and with foundation we have the newcomer, quicksilver, or mercury. Now, there's a lot to speak about this correspondence, but there's something more that we'd like to do with this to get a full picture of ancient, meaning the ancient science. The way the ancient science worked is they knew these 7 metals, and they also knew 4 elements. They called them elements. Metals were metals, and the elements were something else. There's 4 elements. What are these elements? They're well known, right? They're earth and water, air, and fire. So notice that we have water and fire here again. But these were elements. These were different. They weren't considered to be like the metals. They were considered to be something much more basic. By us, these 4 are not elements. Water is not an element. Fire is definitely not an element. Earth is not an element, and neither is air. So we can't really just connect the 4 to the 7. But before we solve that problem, how would we connect the 4 to the 7? Well, it stands to reason that if the 7 correspond to the sfirot, the emotive faculties from loving kindness and down, then the 4 correspond to keter, the crown, and the 3 intellectual faculties: wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. But like we said, they're not elements, so it wouldn't make sense to just throw them in there. So we first have to translate earth, water, air, and fire into elements. How would we do that? Well, we would ask, what is the main element of earth? And the main element is nitrogen. Nitrogen is the nitrates in the earth are what causes growth. And they're really what plants take from the ground. So the most important element in the ground, in the earth, is nitrogen. Then we ask, what about water? What is, well, you don't have to guess too hard, because water is H2O, hydrogen and 2 hydrogens and an oxygen. And we know that hydro literally means water. So we know that hydrogen is the element water. That's the equivalent in our science. Then we ask about air. Well, we all know that the most important ingredient in air is the oxygen. So oxygen would be the equivalent today of air. And fire, that one could stump you a little, but it's very simple actually, because it's carbon. Because what really is the major thing that burns is carbon. And so we have that carbon, oxygen, hydrogen, and nitrogen, which are the 4 most important elements in organic life, not just by human beings, by all organic life. These are the elements out of which life is made out of, plus 2 more. We won't discuss them now, but these are overwhelmingly the majority of the material found in any organic creature. So we have now we have 4 elements and 7 elements, so we can complete the picture. Now there's beautiful, beautiful things that come out of this, and unfortunately we don't have much time to really discuss them. I'll only mention a couple of them, but Rav Ginsburg over the years has analyzed this, going into great detail on this whole model that serves as a translation. It's like a dictionary to take the world of antiquity and to be able to relate to it using modern science. And that's one of the most important things that we can do. So I'll just mention one small thing. We said that quicksilver or mercury is in foundation, and its atomic number is 80. And beautifully, the value of foundation in Hebrew, yesod, is exactly equal to 80. So that works perfectly. That's one of the simple ones. But again, there's dozens of different relationships between the names of the sfirot and the elements that were placed in them. And far beyond that when it goes into analyzing more how each one of these elements, what it represents psychologically and so on. And so actually, this is a primer that could be used when we get to that stage. I don't think we're exactly at that stage yet. But when we get to the stage where science is looking for the spirit within matter, this will be one of the most important pieces of translation from the world of psychology, the ancient world, which was much more psychological, much more in touch with the soul, and our modern world, which is much better at describing physical matter, but a lot of times lacks the depth of understanding of the soul. I also want to dedicate a little bit of this class both to my dear aunt. Her name was Chaya Rivka, daughter of Avram, and she passed away yesterday at the age, thank God, of 94. She was an artist. Artist in every single expression of art that you can think of. It wasn't just she was a great painter. She was artistic in everything she did, in the way she spoke, the way she dressed, the way she cooked, the way she invited us to a table. Everything was always very, very beautiful. But beyond that, she was noble. It wasn't just art, which can be very vulgar sometimes, and she wasn't the type of artist who forced it down your throat. It was exactly the opposite. Everything was very, very gentle. Everything was noble in the way that she acted, in the way she talked to people. And we spent many hours yesterday in the funeral. And even though, who has patience, in the heat and so on, but we spent many hours to hear all I think she has about 30 grandchildren, something like, I don't know, already like 15 or 20 great-grandchildren. And so everybody had to speak, had to say something, and it was beautiful. We really enjoyed it because it was just to remember my childhood when we used to, every Motzei Shabbat, every Saturday night, we would drive to their home and spend a few hours there, and it was always one of the highlights of the week. Today is also the day of passing of my father, so now I have my aunt yesterday and my father today, 11 years since he passed away. I want to say one small thing that I mentioned. I had to speak on Shabbat at Shul because I gave the Kiddush. I had to say something. Last week was Parshat Pinchas, and we talked about self-sacrifice. And I didn't know, but throughout his life, my father had two particular areas that lasted his entire life that he had to sacrifice himself, literally, almost every single day of his life, maybe even multiple times a day, to keep this going. One of them is related to my family, so I've never revealed it to anyone. The other one was related to monetary matters and the amount of tzedakah that he gave. But so people wanted me to speak. I said, one of the things I learned from him was that he didn't tell me about these two things until I was well into my late 30s. And I learned from him that when every person has to have self-sacrifice in life, but you don't reveal this. People shouldn't know about it because it's impossible to live with someone who is sacrificing. It becomes like a burden for everyone else. So self-sacrifice is something that you do between yourself and between God, and that's all that needs to be, that's the only one who needs to know. They weren't siblings. My father was married to my aunt's sister. My mother, she should live a long life. And the other thing I learned from him is that you should share this at a later age with your children, to teach them about self-sacrifice, to know. Meaning, my father shared this with me when I no longer lived in the house for about 25 years already. But sharing it with me, he gave me an opportunity to know, to understand that this is part of life, that this is part of what makes up a decent life. You have to have self-sacrifice in order to live in this world. So with that, thank you very much for joining and listening and taking the time. I hope to see you tomorrow.